May 29, 1986. Veteran LA police officer William "Mild Bill" Leasure strolls along the dockside in the city of Richmond, California. Bill isn't just a cop, though. He's a modern-day pirate, stealing luxury boats from the rich and moving them to buyers he already has lined up. His work goes far beyond theft. Guns, extreme violence, murder for hire. Bill does it all. The media would later dub him the LA Killer Cop. But as a member of the LAPD's traffic division, he's got the nickname Mild Bill since he rarely made arrests and almost never wrote tickets. And he didn't fit the department's reputation for heavy-handed policing. To the few people he pulled over, he was the kindest officer they had ever met. But that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it's said that he is the dirtiest cop that ever patrolled the city of Los Angeles. Or at least that's what the detectives who had been watching him would say. Bill grew up in Wayne, Michigan. His father worked hard at the local Ford production plant, but money was always tight. Bill never had much, but he didn't complain. He never misbehaved, hardly was ever punished by his mother, the Sunday school teacher. But Bill didn't like school. He didn't like authority. He spent most of his childhood alone tending to animals, dreaming of the one thing he truly loved: cars. He especially loved Corvettes. One day, he told himself, he would have a fleet of them. After school, he joined the Marines and went to Vietnam. He hated it. He hated what was happening to the Vietnamese. Despite that, his record was good, and in 1969, the LAPD was waiting. The department was eager for tough former soldiers, especially during an era of riots and radical unrest, when strict policing often crossed over to outright violence. But not for Bill. His distrust of authority surfaced when a supervisor told him to lie in a report after the use of excessive force on an innocent man. Bill obeyed, but reluctantly. From then on, his fellow officers didn't trust him. He was an outsider and he would never be one of the guys. But in his personal life, he didn't mind breaching a few ethical boundaries. He'd gotten married and had a kid before the war, but like so many soldiers, he'd come back a changed man. After he cheated with a 17-year-old girl, his wife filed for divorce. And she got almost everything: their young daughter, the house, everything in it, as well as their Datsun 240Z. Bill got what he wanted: his Harley and his Mustang Mach 1. He was a man who didn't like authority, who didn't trust divorce courts, and who was in love with machines. And this was a pattern that would shape the rest of his life. Then he met Betsy Mogul. Unlike him, she'd grown up with money. Her dad had been a famous illusionist, once performing for British royals, twice at the White House for Presidents Truman and Eisenhower. She was incredibly smart. After she passed the bar in 1972 and went to work in the LA Attorney's Office, she became known as Straight Up Betsy. How straight she really was would one day shock the nation. They seemed to have plenty of cash, a condo in Long Beach, a rental in Sun Valley, and a main home in Northridge, where by 1979 Bill owned so many sports cars that he had to build an 8-car garage to store them all. To the people who knew them, they were high achievers. They seemed to have it all. But Bill seemed only interested in what Betsy called his toys: the cockpit of a World War II plane, stripped cars, engines, and guns, lots of guns. And of course, his sports cars, which he bought, fixed up, and sold. He now had several Corvettes, his favorites of all. Betsy had a Mercedes, a small piece of her life that would one day cause her profound stress. Bill had some strange friends, and he kept strange hours too. He'd come home just as Betsy was setting off for work. On the weekends, he'd often disappear with his newest toy, a 42-foot yacht he called the Thunderbolt. He'd tell his friends, "She does her thing and I do mine." He and Betsy even had separate bank accounts. What Betsy didn't know, though, was that he had other women too. He got apartments for them. Bill liked to think that he was a knight in shining armor for the young, broke, and the restless, but the truth is that he was living a secret life. Just like his friend Dennis Winebaugh, a welder, a gun lover, and a motorhead, Bill met him at Weiland's machine shop. Known as 44, short for 44 Magnum, he and Bill could talk about guns for hours. In 1977, Bill took Dennis to a meeting at El Sol Tortilla factory in Boyle Heights, East LA. What was said was unknown, but what we do know is that someone wanted the owner dead. Really quick, this is our new channel for all things true crime, so make sure to subscribe for more deep dives like these, and don't forget to like the video. It makes a big difference for us. But back to Mild Bill. The 76-year-old Gilberto Cervantes had built a tortilla empire, coming from rags in Mexico to riches in LA. But more recently, he had just threatened to disinherit his stepson Tony and Tony's wife Paulette. On March 20th, Dennis Winebaugh and a friend, Dennis France, rode out to the city of San Gabriel. France said that Winebaugh told him he was going to beat someone up for Bill. According to France, Winebaugh would do anything for him. He'd even broken a man's legs once, or so France had said. and now they were driving in the direction of the home of Gilberto Cervantes. They pulled up outside the house at the allocated time. Cervantes walked into his driveway. Dennis Winebaugh approached him with a gun hidden behind his back. He took aim and fired. A few weeks later, Winebaugh and France sat with a man named Bill Jennings and bragged about killing someone over a power struggle at a tortilla business. Winebaugh laughed it off, saying that he wasn't worried about arrest, he had a friend in the LAPD. Just then, Bill Leasure's LAPD black and white patrol car pulled up outside. Dennis told Jennings not to breathe a word about what he had just said. If he did, the cop outside would kill him. Straight up, he said, he's a killer. Jennings would one day be asked to repeat that under oath. One of Bill's other friends was Art Smith. In 1980, he was supposed to be celebrating his upcoming 6th anniversary with his wife, Anne Marie Smith. But things hadn't gone as planned. She wanted a divorce. It turned into a ferocious court battle. Anne's own daughter testified against her, taking Art's side. In Anne's version of the story, Art was to blame. He'd thrown her against the wall, ripped up her clothes, and cut her credit cards. Now she wanted him to sign a property settlement that would make her a wealthy woman. To Bill, Art was a generous man, a loving stepfather, and a good husband, but Anne, well, Bill thought that Anne just wanted to bleed Art dry. She was much younger than Art when they met, in her 30s, pretty, twice divorced, and a daughter to care for without child support. She was down on her luck. Her car had just been repoed, and she was earning a low wage at the salon where she worked. Art was lonely after a divorce, but he was a man of means. In other words, there wasn't much chemistry between them, but despite this, he proposed after just 6 months, and she told him straight up, "I just don't love you." "You'll learn to," he said. They were married on March 3, 1974. Art always had plenty of cash. He kept almost $100,000, almost $500,000 in 2025, in a safe. He bought properties and sold them on. He bought and sold cars, including a Cadillac and a Mercedes that he sold to Bill. He told Bill that he was investing $30,000 for an island off the coast of Belize in Central America. He was going to build a resort and live his winter years in the sun. Bill's interest was piqued. He wanted to get involved. Like Bill, Art was a builder, a fixer. He paid for Anne's breast enlargement and then followed it up with a chin job, a nose job, and work on her eyes. He bought her anything she asked for and treated her daughter like his own. But Anne wasn't the least bit interested in the other parts of the marriage. Bill thought Anne was using Art for his money. So when it seemed like Art could lose everything that he'd worked for in the divorce, Bill took his side. After all, Bill was known to be extremely stingy. He counted every penny. What Anne was doing to his friend was like a cardinal sin. So when Art accused Anne of cheating, Bill was happy to tail her to see if it was true. When he wasn't following her, his new friend Dennis France was. Bill would do anything for Art. Art once told a friend he knew a cop who could make people vanish. He could have someone attacked in the street, murdered, and no one would know it was an arranged hit. The friend thought Art was joking. One day, he'd have to state Art's words under oath. Then somebody broke into Art's office and stole important files about him, details of his hidden money, the properties he owned, and the taxes he hadn't paid. Art was convinced Anne had arranged it. With that information, she could destroy him, and now she had that information. Her lawyer contacted Art about it. Anne wanted most of his fortune or the files would be released. Art told a friend, "I'll have her killed before she gets anything of mine." Again, words that would one day be repeated in a court of law. But Anne wasn't done. She succeeded in getting a kick-out order forcing Art to vacate his beloved house in South Pasadena. His dream of Belize was crumbling before his eyes. Just a few months later, on May 29, 1980, Anne was having a busy morning. She went to the South Pasadena Police Department to see Detective Bud Swap. She'd heard rumors that Art might hurt her and wanted him to know. But Swap wasn't there. She'd missed him by minutes. So she went to Highland Park, where she'd been working part-time at Deanne's House of Beauty. She broke down while cutting an elderly woman's hair, sobbing about her divorce, how her daughter had taken her husband's side. A man walked into the salon, short and pale, his cap covering his eyes. He grabbed Anne and said, "This is a holdup, give me your money." But then he whispered, "I'm nervous, very nervous." He was holding what she presumed was a gun, but for some reason it was inside of a sock. He then told them to empty the till. He didn't seem at all interested in the ladies' handbags or purses or the fact that Anne's coworker was wearing a large diamond ring. He took Anne to the back. Seconds had passed, and silence. And then a single shot rang out. The women found Anne on the floor, blood pooling around her. The bullet had entered her heart and lungs. She was dead within minutes. For LAPD detectives, this wasn't a robbery case. They knew about Anne's messy divorce. and the supposed thief had left with hardly anything of value. This was a hit. Art was their prime suspect. Not the man who pulled the trigger, but the one who had paid for it. Without physical evidence, there was nothing they could do. They soon had a man they thought was the killer, a heroin addict, Charles Persico. But there was a problem. Persico didn't drive a green Chevy Nova. That was the same type of car a mechanic across the street from the salon had seen, not once, but twice, with two men inside moments before the murder. Persico denied it, but without a good lawyer, he took a plea. Art attended Ann's funeral, his good friend cop, Bill Leasure, at his side. Bill had taken a sick day the morning Ann was murdered. He was at home nursing his stomachache, or so he would claim. A few days following the funeral, Bill's friend Dennis France seemed to have come into money. He got his car repainted from green to bright orange with white stripes down the side and the word Rally written in the middle. It was a 1972 Chevy Nova. France was always hanging out with Bill in those days. He liked to go with Bill on patrol, listening to the police radio, hoping for a 187, police code for murder. Bill would sometimes turn on the siren, even though he never did anything resembling police work. Sometimes France would be in the car when Bill picked up Irene Wong, Bill's new college student lover. France loved the ride-alongs. It made him feel powerful, like he was a cop. He would do almost anything for Bill. Bill returned the favor, sometimes giving France his cars to use, introducing him to other cops. They would call him a cop groupie, mocking him. They could never understand what Bill saw in him. September 9, 1981. Tony de los Reyes, stepson of the murdered Gilberto Cervantes, was in his white Ford Thunderbird driving toward the Chez Nora Bar, a nightclub in Sherman Oaks, north of Hollywood. He was performing with his jazz band that night. Tony should have gotten his father's tortilla business, but after family feuds and a messy divorce with his wife Paulette, the business was destroyed, but his stepdad had left him plenty of cash. But Tony was no angel. After Gilberto was murdered, he'd apparently hired Dennis 44 Winebaugh to kill Paulette. It was a messy situation. But Paulette was supposedly sleeping with Winebaugh, so he took the $5,000 for the hit and left town. Eventually, Tony and Paulette got back together. Tony agreed to rewrite his will so that if he died, his father's fortune, around $1 million, roughly $4 million in 2025, would go to their young son Aaron. Paulette would manage the money through a trust fund until he came of age. But the good times didn't last. Paulette told her friend, the cop Bill Leasure, that Tony beat her and forced her into strange acts in the bedroom. She was crying, "He's an animal. I wish he were dead." Tony nearly did die when his house mysteriously burned down. It looked like arson, and he was sure Paulette had something to do with it. This time, there was no way that he was going back on the divorce. But now Tony's life was all about music and hanging out with his new girlfriend, Sandra. That night, Paulette was supposed to come down to the club to collect child support money from him, but she didn't arrive. It was strange. When cash was involved, Paulette never missed a beat. Tony finished his set at about 1:30 a.m., had a scotch with Sandra, and they walked out into the barely lit empty parking lot. Sandra hated his car. Not long back, she'd been in the car when someone shot out the rear window. Tony told her it was just kids. That kind of thing can happen, especially around Boyle Heights. They walked out to the Thunderbird. Tony had been drinking, so Sandra would drive. She put the key in the door and stopped. There was someone behind them. In the corner of the lot, she could make out a dark figure. They started to approach and uttered the words that she would never forget: "Your money or your life." Sandra was shaking. Tony told her to get in the car and drive. She fumbled with the keys. The shot echoed across the empty parking lot. Tony was on the ground, blood staining his pink shirt and white pants, his glasses bouncing off the asphalt. Headshot. He died 7 hours later in the hospital. Paulette went to the funeral, but the detectives weren't fooled. No one had taken money that night, and Tony's wallet, his gold medallion, had all been left alone. Detectives told Sandra, "I promise one day you and I will be eating popcorn at Paulette's execution." Paulette's tears dried as she expected to become the new owner of Tony's properties, his tortilla fortune. And then the tears flowed again. Tony had done all the paperwork just as he had promised her, but he hadn't ticked the final box, the actual signing of the will. "I get nothing from Tony's death, nothing," she told Bill, her mascara running down her cheek. As Bill's coworkers marveled at his riches and his regular trips to Belize with Betsy, Bill was still just a traffic cop, still hardly ever issuing tickets. They couldn't understand how a cop and a lawyer could have so many properties, cars, and a yacht. And now Bill was planning to buy an old military F-86 Sabre jet and get his pilot's license so he could fly it. Combined, the couple earned about $80,000 a year, $280,000 in 2025, but that still didn't seem like enough for boats, a plane, and a fleet of cars. Retirement was right around the corner, a slow-paced one on a Belize island with Art Smith as Bill and Betsy's neighbor. But on May 29, 1986, it all went wrong. Bill and his partner in the boat thefts, Robert D. Kunz, had just stolen a white and blue yacht in San Diego, the Holiday. After refitting it, they renamed it La Vita. They already had a buyer lined up, but when they sailed it down to Richmond, there was no buyer. There were only police officers, their guns drawn. Cops at LAPD's Central Traffic Division couldn't believe it. Mild Bill Leasure, boring Bill, a major criminal, a gangster. When detectives searched his house, they found a stack of guns, some legal, some illegal, like a machine gun. They found the silencers he'd illegally been selling. They found his account books, evidence of ill-gotten gains. Betsy couldn't believe it. She didn't believe it. But there was not much that she could say about her husband's secret apartment where he kept his young lover of 6 years, Irene Wong. He'd only recently paid for Wong to have an abortion. Wong was furious. She thought he loved her, telling the cops that she hoped he'd get the death penalty. Detectives knew that Bill was connected to a series of murders. He knew all the suspects and all the victims. Was Bill Leasure running a murder-for-hire business? And Betsy? She was still an assistant city attorney. This didn't look good for her. She'd been an excellent lawyer, still straight-up Betsy. But she was now married to a man who would soon be called the most corrupt cop in LA history. She looked clean, but the authorities still went after her. When they couldn't find evidence of her being connected to her husband's schemes, they tried to get her for not paying tax on her Mercedes. If found guilty, it would destroy her career. But Bill claimed that he had signed the forms. She won the case, accusing petty, corrupt, and venal politicians of wanting to ruin her and destroy her husband. She settled for $140,000, $410,000 in 2025. She vowed to support Bill, who she was sure was being set up for murder. Bill was placed in protective custody at the Los Angeles County Central Jail while the media wrote countless stories about his alleged hitman business, murders over money, houses, and Bill was smack bang in the middle. Dennis France came clean. He said he'd murdered those people at the behest of Bill, that Bill was indeed running a murder-for-hire business. This was the deal. If Dennis agreed to testify against Bill, he wouldn't spend a day in prison. Dennis might not have been very smart, but he got himself a sweetheart deal. He even convinced the prosecutor to agree to let him keep his guns and hunting license. He also wanted the city to pay for his moving expenses because staying at his present place was too dangerous. It was the plea bargain of a lifetime. At least 2 murders, and they were going to make his life more comfortable. Bill was the one they wanted. The problem was Dennis's story changed all the time. His shaky testimony wasn't enough. They needed more. So the investigators put Dennis in the same jail as Bill. He was wearing a wire, so all he had to do was get Bill to talk about the murders. But Bill was shrewd. He answered Dennis's questions, but he'd only write them down in pencil and then he'd erase them. He'd known that they would try something like this. But the next time Dennis agreed to try to incriminate Bill, the officers installed CCTV cameras. They actually saw what Bill wrote down, what he had written when Dennis had asked what he had done with the gun used to kill Ann. Bill wrote, "Melted." In another note, he told Dennis to dump everything illegal, and that was enough. Bill was finished. Or so you would think. Dennis's claims had to stand up in a court of law, but Dennis was not a very reliable witness. His story changed so many times that detectives weren't sure if he was telling the truth. He seemed to know details about the crimes, the gun, the ammo, but when it came to Bill's involvement, he was never sure about how much Bill paid him, or when, or where. No doubt he had killed people, but had Bill paid him to do it? Where was the hard evidence? He'd even lied about Gilberto Cervantes. First, he said that he'd killed him, and then it changed. Dennis Winebaugh was the one who had killed him. France was just a passenger, thinking they were going to deliver a beating. He couldn't even take detectives to the scene of Tony's murder. They drove all around all day, and Dennis simply did not know where he'd apparently murdered a man. Even so, he knew that Tony's window had once been shot out. He claimed to have done it with Bill next to him. He said Bill told him to kill Tony, but Dennis missed on purpose because he was worried he would hit Sandra. On the stand, he was so nervous that he snapped the rubber bands that he was playing with. The defense absolutely destroyed him, his credibility ticking down to 0 every time he opened his mouth. There were so many holes in his stories, he looked like a liar when all he could answer was, "I don't know." To the defense, it looked like he might have been coached by detectives, and he'd still blown it. He'd surely been involved in at least one of the murders, but much of the rest of his story didn't ring true. The LA cops already looked bad. They'd arrested Charles Persico for Ann's murder, and now he'd been exonerated because of Dennis's confession. That would cost the city $4.8 million in compensation. It made the authorities seem either corrupt or incompetent or both. Worse, when Bill's trial began in 1991, LA had just recovered from the Rodney King riots. The department had lost the trust of the people. Sending Bill to prison for a long time would help clean up its image, but that was the reason why Bill claimed that he was being made a scapegoat. He said that he was a pawn in the political game of the U.S. government's whitewashing. The jury understood this was a possibility. The prosecution needed more than just Dennis's confession. There was Art Smith, Ann's former husband. He was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy for arranging the contract killing. He'd agreed to testify against Bill to avoid a death sentence. Then it exploded in the prosecution's face. Art changed his mind. He called the whole system corrupt, accusing cops and prosecutors of lying. He didn't care if he got a death sentence. He refused to take a plea. The jurors weren't present, but the absence of his testimony for the prosecution was a major loss. Prosecutors agreed not to seek a death sentence, and Art got life without the possibility of parole. His dream of Belize in the trash can of broken dreams. The prosecution wanted to prove Bill had been sitting outside the salon when Ann died, just as France had testified. But the defense produced a witness, a Los Angeles building inspector. He swore that that morning when Bill was out sick, he had been at Bill's house helping with the 8-car garage. He couldn't remember the exact day, but he said he was there when the concrete was delivered, May 29, 1980, the day Ann was murdered. And the receipts for the delivery said May 29th around 9:30 a.m., close to the time of the shooting. The prosecution argued the inspector was a dubious witness. They called other building inspectors to the stand who said the inspector had once received a Corvette as a gift from Bill. Then came the testimony of Paulette, accused of hiring hitmen to kill her father-in-law and her husband. She'd never lived the life of luxury that she dreamed of, but for testifying against Bill, she received the reduced charge of second-degree murder and solicitation of murder. At first, she denied Bill had arranged the murders. Only after considerable efforts by the police and prosecutors did she change her mind and testify against him. She arrived in court like it was a fashion shoot, wearing a black wig, diamonds sparkling on her fingers, a low-cut black and white polka dot dress, a beige hat, and a pair of tinted glasses. She answered questions with long monologues about life and love, claiming that she was an innocent woman caught up in a bad man's world. She also had said she only pleaded guilty because of the plea arrangement. She was innocent, she said, weeping, telling the judge this had all been a nightmare for her. The judge wasn't buying it. He said there was overwhelming evidence of her cruelty, viciousness, and callousness. He struggled to deliver the sentence as she cried so loud it drowned out his voice. For her testimony against Bill, the second-degree murder charge was dismissed. For solicitation, she was sentenced to time served and immediately released. In 1989, her son Aaron accused her of defrauding him out of money left to him by his father, Tony. As his legal guardian, he said she had taken everything. She lost the case and was forced to pay him $75,000. Robert Coons, turning up to court in his Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses, also got off lightly for the yacht theft cases. He admitted to being a grade-A liar but received just 2 years from a possible 10. He agreed to testify that Bill had once talked to him about his involvement in Ann Smith and Tony De La Reyes' murders. Dennis 44 Winebaugh pleaded not guilty to the murder of Gilberto Cervantes. The prosecution argued Bill had hired him to murder Cervantes at the behest of Paulette, who had wanted control of the Tortilla empire. Dennis was looking at a life sentence, but he wouldn't take a plea and refused to testify against Bill. He agreed that Bill had known the families of the victims, but said Bill wasn't involved in the murders. But he died of heart failure just before he was about to take the stand. It was a huge blow for the defense. For the prosecution, it was a tough trial. All their witnesses were thieves, plotters, or murderers, and there was no hard evidence linking Bill to arranging the murders. They claimed Bill charged $15,000 for the hits, and he had plenty of cash. But they needed a better motive than money, so they painted a psychological picture. Mild Bill was boring. He had an ordinary job as a traffic cop. What he needed, they said, was a thrill, excitement, to fill an inner need, and that's why he turned into the proud owner of a Murder Inc. The defense said it was ridiculous. If Bill needed a thrill, he could have committed the murders himself. He could have done what many other LAPD cops were doing at the time and roughed up civilians, or at least occasionally pulled out his firearm. The best evidence was the notes that Bill had written to France in jail. The defense argued Bill had only been trying to find out if the guns would get him in trouble, not that they were proof that he'd arranged the hits. The prosecution never put Bill on the stand. The jury deliberated for 4 weeks. Jury foreman Thomas Maldonado, a UCLA pharmacist, said the witness testimonies weren't strong given who those people were and what they had to lose by not testifying. But he said of the video of the notes, surely it proved Bill was involved in the murders. The vote was 11-1 for a conviction on the count of conspiracy to commit the murder of Ann Smith. It came with a 25-year sentence, but that one juror wouldn't change his mind. He was Edgar Mito, a graveyard shift worker at the United Parcel Service. He was adamant the tape didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Bill had arranged the murders. It ended in a deadlock 10-2. But on November 1, 1991, Bill pleaded no contest in his second trial to 2 counts of second-degree murder. He maintained that he was a scapegoat for the tarnished LAPD, so he didn't trust another trial, not with so many people in LA now distrusting the police. He was sentenced to at least 15 years. He thought that was unfair, later telling the media, "You'll never meet a milder, more passive guy than me. I didn't kill anybody." The parole board didn't see it that way. Like much of the public, they saw him as a mastermind of a criminal enterprise, as someone who used and abused people not as smart as himself. He was denied parole in the 2000s. By then, Dennis France was living quietly with his wife in California, driving a bus for a living and hunting in his spare time. He was still telling stories, like the time he and Bill pulled off a bank job. It's not certain that they ever did, but France sure liked to talk. After 29 years, in 2020, Bill was up for parole again. He was in his 70s now, admitting he'd always had issues with self-esteem and greed, but he wasn't a criminal mastermind. His parole was granted that year. California Governor Gavin Newsom overturned it. In 2025, age 81, Bill finally got out, still denying that he was the most corrupt cop in LA history. Just a reminder, this is our new channel for all things true crime, so if you liked the video and you want us to cover more cases like this, please like the video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments who we should cover next.